Welcome back to Living on the Ocean. We're gonna make epoxy laminated connections for the top rudder hinge, and I'd like to share in this episode how you can make that connection that always looked impossible.
This is an interesting connection to do because you can do it in places that you put together. For example, in the beams of a trimaran, when you have two halves, you put them together and all the bulkheads need to have a connection on the inside. You lay this material over it first, make all those connections, set it all up, and then put the whole thing back together, and it's a perfect joint.
My name is Arie Baartman, and together with Cheryl Hudson we're working on Trimaran Dawn. We decided that she deserved a much better rudder and extended her stern on the sandbank, and we're very happy with the result after the painting job. Now it's time to make the rudder work, and for that we needed more bulkheads to support the top rudder hinge, and you saw me make those bulkheads, 2 in one time, which I later cut into 2 pieces, stuck into the holes left and right of the middle bulkhead, and in that way made a very strong connection under the steps that all joined up to the top rudder hinge, and used a very long stainless steel tube to make sure that it all lined out. I'm filling out the carbon fiber connections that we made on the outside of this triangle, making this top rudder hinge very strong.
You need to sand this smooth to prevent more dust from the water than necessary. It's only a small job to stick a little bit of plastic up here. The best I can do to catch most of the dust. So let's see if that's gonna work.
It would have been handier if I would have thought beforehand that I should have left the pipe a little bit longer. But I didn't, and now I have to make an extension to this pipe, and I use a piece of inox tube to make sure that it all lines out again. Now the angle of the top is not 90 degrees with the axle, because the water runs out of the steps. So I have to take a tiny bit of the carbon to make sure that it all fits nicely. And even this little bit of fiber is stopping it from going back over the tube. But a bit of sandpaper takes care of that. It fits nicely now, and with the filler we can put it permanently in place later. But we also have to make the inside of this pipe clean, because when I put carbon fiber around it, a little bit of epoxy came inside the bottom of this pipe. And the easiest way to take that out is with a sharp scraper. You can just very gently cut basically the not yet fully cured very hard epoxy, because that takes much more time than just one day. And after also some sandpaper.
This axle now spins nicely in here.
And that's great. It's always fun when things work out. But there is one issue.
Carbon fiber and stainless steel both conduct electricity, so we're gonna get galvanic corrosion in there. It's not that high with stainless steel, but we could get pits in the stainless. Carbon is in the higher levels, so I'm expecting not too much trouble, but as an emergency plan we have very thin sleeves in here that are actually bearings, and we're gonna use a 5 mil, we now want 35, we go back to 30 mil titanium rod if we see too much problems coming with this, and that's if it's necessary. Well, that's a very nice cut, isn't it? So epoxy won't stick to this bit, because obviously that will be a disaster. I know the weld need to be there, which proves those pipes are not 100% a circle. That's the lowest I can get it. So now I can put a fillet against there and make the top. But Arie, you first should have made the top, because you could have easily laid a board over this. Well, we know this works. Really, I have to take it out. And you can see only there and there I got a tiny bit of jamming, but it would have never put any filler coming out on those edges. That's what we need.
Of course, we need to cut a lot of bits out of our video to put days of work in just 20 minutes. But it still gives you an idea of the amount of work that goes in just a simple triangle like this and good connections. We've decided to speed up some of the video to give you a better idea of how much work it really took. Now the middle bulkhead needs to be higher, but you will see that a special connection we're gonna make in there will take care of that.
And that's basically my shape.
And a simple way to find out where I have to make the little round hole is sticking a pipe in here, put some pencil on the end of the tube of this pipe, spin it around and basically draw the circle on the back of this piece of foam. And then we use a simple tool and a drill to cut a nice round hole. I call them hole saws, but I actually have no idea if that's the real English term.
Well, I think that's very nice. So that fits nicely. I think this is really nice because when that's continued you can sit on here very nicely if the tiller is over and be fishing. The rudder will be here or step already on it. We kept this on purpose a bit bigger, this top step, because if you catch fish this would be a great place to clean stuff. Just one screw tiny bit far through there. Fill this with filler. That's it. Done, 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 done. Okay, this can go in now permanently. Let's see if we can get it in a neater way. The weld is there.
With a bit of a pipe sticking to the top of the triangle that we're making, we can make a much nicer finish to it all. That's why this piece of pipe needs to be put on top.
Okay, so I'm gonna lift this up now a tiny bit. So when I put the filler there, it goes well underneath and then I go plop. So I made a little bit of filler, it's quite thick. And all I have to do is squeeze it in that corner.
All well prepared, it's a simple job to glue this carbon tube on top with a bit of filler, hold well in place with a stainless steel tube inside. And the leftovers can be used to make the top of the bulkheads nice and smooth. The pipe came out easily the next day. The tape had done its work perfectly. I've already taken it off here and cleaned it all back up, but I'm leaving the pipe in here for a very good reason. And when this was curing, we also made the flens. I'm cheating, I already checked this. So yesterday we stuck this on here and I did it in one time. We put the brown tape on, we put this glass on here. And normally I wait for this to cure and then put it on here. This time I wanted to speed up the process, and while this was still curing I stuck it on here, and I was quite nervous if this would have moved, but you can see the result. It's perfect. Now obviously those lines I drew already this morning after I took this off. I'm now going to cut out this hole, take away the extra support bits of foam and put glass underneath as you see me do before. And then we're going to do something that you haven't seen before, and that's put a U-shape of carbon over this middle one, which is then going to be stuck to this, glassed on here, and then everything gets put into glue and pressed together.
then this foam can easily be shaped in the shape of this stab, and that's the end of the top rudder hinge. Okay, some glassing, some plastering and painting, but we're in good process. It's beautiful weather again, so this goes inside. I don't need that. This now needs to be drilled out.
I love using the multi-tool, but in high speed it sounds like I'm at the dentist. But at least it gives a nice clean cut with not too much dust. And now we have a nice flange. I stuck some pieces of foam on top of the middle bulkhead, which I'm now taking away to make sure that there was a bit of a curve. And I stuck pieces of foam underneath to keep the filler in the right places. And instead of grinding off all the epoxy that came outside the flange, I can use a multi-tool to take off the top edge, which saves just a lot of dust. And we don't like dust, and that's why we always use vacuum cleaners. A good vacuum cleaner is so handy, but sometimes the vacuum cleaner attacks me. Well, all the sharp edges are gone now. I can now use a scraper to start scraping underneath the flange and take away the bits of bumps that need to be gone before I can put glass fiber in this. So we're going to use two different connections to connect this top triangle to the three bulkheads. The flange on the side, which we have done in the previous episode, of which I've put a link right here above. The middle connection we're going to make by putting glass fiber around it. And I could have also made a flange in the middle, like I done on the sides, but I would have had no space for my hands to be working. So this way I have a lot more space, and I need that because to get a good connection we need to sand it all very well. Even when I did a lot of sanding already to the sides of the bulkhead before I put the flange on top. Obviously that made it a lot easier, that saved a lot of work. I left this stainless steel pipe in here just to keep it strong enough so nobody pulls it off, thinking, oh, it's a strong carbon fiber pipe, not knowing that it's only stuck on with filler and not yet finished.
I've put this brown tape on here. You've seen me do this before. I've done this for the water tank in one of the previous episodes, so that's not so interesting to put glass fiber under here now. What is going to be interesting, because that's new, putting glass fiber around this, and then tomorrow we make that loose. That should be then very nicely fitting on whatever shape this has, as long as it isn't going in underneath here too much. Then after that, when that's cured, we're going to lay a bit of glue on top of here, on that top glass fiber, and lay the lid back in place, and that will fill out, the glue will fill out the perfect height for the lid to lay perfectly on this and this here. The next day, if we take it back off, that U shape is stuck to this lid and will come off with it and then be on the bottom of the lid, and it can be then glassed, similar like what I now do here. Then everything is going to be cleaned up, sanded, put together, job done.
Easy peasy it sounds. Well, speed up the video makes it also going quick, but actually it takes always more time than you think. Cutting all the bits of glass fiber, laying them nicely on top of each other. Make sure they get very well wetted in with epoxy, and also paint already inside so that the surface is epoxied from both sides and you get a very good connection. Because it's hard to look in there. I've been trying to use mirrors for jobs like this, but they get very dirty. Sometimes it's a good option. But one of the nice things from this is that actually the glass fiber is see-through. And if I put this new piece in place, I can look from the top and see where my fingers push the glass fiber all the way in the corner. And that makes it all a lot easier. Now the glass fiber does not want to go in a 90-degree corner, so I made a good filler in there before I start putting the glass in. And this filler is still wet and can move a little bit where it needs to be. It goes nice and fast when you speed it up, and quite fun to see. The difficult part is not so much getting them in place, because you get a feel for it, but your gloves get very slippery from the wetted pieces of glass, and you need toilet paper to clean your gloves regularly, and I take the outside cheap gloves off and put other ones on, because eventually you can hardly hold your brush. To make the U-shape for the connection in the middle, we lay 4 layers of BX fiber over the middle bulkhead, which does have that brown tape underneath so it comes loose again. And then a final check. It feels good and I'm happy I can take my gloves off. Job done. When the epoxy was cured, I stuck a screwdriver in between the sides so it came loose from the tape. And you can see it's a nice U-shape, it just needs some trimming on the edges. The brown tape can now be taken off. It doesn't look so strong yet, but that will come when it's stuck to the bottom of the lid. We have to stick some brown tape on the bulkhead before, to make sure that no leaking glue is gonna stick this forever to the bulkhead so we can never get it off again. And then temporarily we press the top on it very lightly, not pushing it all the way down, just to see if the glue is high enough and to see where the glue is gonna touch the board. Now we can add some extra glue also on the board in this place and make sure that it's basically the glue presses into the glue and we get the best connection. And by now pressing the top on firmly on the flances on the outside, it squeezes all the epoxy out between that U-shape and the top, making the perfect height that bulkhead and U-shape need to have. A little bit of duct tape or screws or clamps to keep it in place and waiting for this to cure. After curing it's always a bit exciting if it comes loose, but we've done it well. This shape fits perfectly on there. And you can see the height is higher here than there. Now we can make it strong with glass and carbon fiber on the sides and then put glue inside and glue all the way on the sides of the flange and put it together. Well, we sanded it all nicely and put the glass and carbon fiber on the sides, not so much on the top. It's much more important that it's here in the corner very strong. Time to glue it all together, but look very well what I did with the top of the bulkhead. I've taken out the top centimeter of foam and stick this filler inside of it, which also now glues it from the inside against the carbon fiber. And we don't need a lot of epoxy, so with a scraper that you can also use for tiles, I take away all the excess of epoxy after I've put it on and make sure that everything is a nice fine spread out layer to glue everything together. But I'm always doing it from 2 sides. It may not be necessary, but it just gives me some extra security. When all the surfaces are properly covered with epoxy, it's time to say goodbye. Never see you again. And you can see that I also put filler in the inside with my fingers in that U-shape. And that's it, the lid is on. We press it and hammer it with my fist a little bit to make the epoxy spread out nicely. I use the leftovers to fill the sides out, and then I'm gonna get screws in it because the top is actually a straight panel of foam. I did not make it round yet by putting glass fiber on the top side because I need to sand it. So I needed screws to hold this board in exactly the same curve as the transom step has. And when it's cured we will take the screws out, fare it in line with the transom step, put fiber over it, sandplaster and paint it, and most people will never realize how much work went into this top rudder hinge. Except you that have been watching this episode. There's a full playlist of all the building that we done to Trimaran Dawn in the top left corner, and in the bottom left corner is a round button to subscribe to our channel. On the right hand side are all our sailing videos from Trimaran Dawn and Trimaran Twilight. Thanks for watching Living on the Ocean.